You didn't stop trusting because people hurt you. You stopped trusting because you don't trust yourself to survive it again. And that's the part nobody wants to admit. It's not the betrayal that broke you. It's the moment you realized you saw the signs, ignored them, and stayed. That's what you're really afraid of repeating. Before you stopped trusting other people, the first person you stopped trusting was yourself. Think back to the moments that shifted you. It wasn't the first time someone lied to you that hurt the most. It was the moment you realized you saw the red flags, felt the discomfort, heard the voice inside you whisper, "This isn't right." And you still stayed. You still gave the benefit of the doubt. You still convinced yourself that you were overthinking or being too sensitive. You abandoned yourself to keep the relationship, the friendship, the job, or the comfort alive. That is where the fracture began within you, not outside of you. You didn't lose trust in people. You lost trust in your own ability to choose, to sense, to protect, and to walk away. Most people think the reason they can't trust anymore is because of what others did to them. But if that were fully true, then people who healed wouldn't be able to trust again either, but many do. The deeper truth is that you are not scared of people lying, you're scared of you believing them again. You're scared of missing the signs again, of being blindsided again, of ignoring the discomfort again. The fear isn't what if they hurt me. It's what if I abandon myself the way I did last time. Your mistrust is not a reflection of how bad the world is, but how disconnected you became from your own inner compass. You once believed in your ability to choose good people, and when that choice went wrong, you stopped believing in your judgment. That is what actually broke. If you look closely, you'll see the pattern. There were moments where you knew something felt off, but you didn't speak up because you didn't want to seem difficult or dramatic. You didn't ask for clarity because you didn't want to push someone away. You didn't set boundaries because you were afraid setting them would make the person leave. You gave silence instead of honesty, tolerance instead of standards, and excuses instead of consequences. And every time you did that, you reinforced a belief. My needs don't matter, my feelings are inconvenient, and my intuition doesn't deserve to be followed. So now, when trust feels impossible, it's not that you can't trust others, it's that you don't feel safe trusting the part of you that let things slide. You may have convinced yourself that building walls is protection, but walls don't protect, they isolate. They don't filter out the wrong people. They block out everyone, including the right ones. You didn't build walls because you're stronger now, you built them because you don't believe you'd survive another moment of self-betrayal. You're not avoiding people, you're avoiding the version of you that put others first and left you unprotected. The person you don't trust anymore is the older version of you who tolerated what hurt you. And until you forgive that version of yourself, you'll keep punishing the current one with loneliness, skepticism, and hyper-independence disguised as strength. Hyper-independence often gets celebrated as strength, but more often, it's a trauma response. It's what happens when you teach yourself that needing no one is safer than needing the wrong one. But strength is not, I can survive alone. Strength is, I can choose wisely, walk away early, enforce boundaries, and trust myself to handle whatever comes. You cannot build trust by avoiding relationships, shutting down emotionally, or expecting betrayal at every turn. That's not wisdom, that's fear wearing the mask of intelligence. True wisdom is being able to open up again with better standards, not closed doors. You rebuild trust in yourself by proving to yourself, with your actions, that you will never abandon you again. Rebuilding self-trust is not a mindset shift, it is a behavioral one. You can say all the affirmations you want, read every self-help book, listen to endless podcasts, but if your actions still dismiss your intuition the moment someone disrespects you, you haven't changed anything. Self-trust is built by doing what you tell yourself you will do. It's built through moments of alignment between what you feel, what you need, and what you choose. When you say you'll leave if certain behavior repeats, and you actually leave, you strengthen your self-trust. When you feel discomfort, and you speak up instead of staying silent, you strengthen your self-trust. When you stop negotiating your values for connection, you strengthen your self-trust. There is a version of you that existed before you learned to doubt yourself. A version of you that believed your feelings were valid, your instincts were accurate, and your heart was worth protecting. That version didn't second-guess every decision or rehearse every conversation in their head. They trusted themselves because no one had taught them yet that self-betrayal was the price of belonging. Your work now is not to become someone new, but to remove everything that convinced you not to trust the person you already were. You don't need to rebuild yourself, you need to return to yourself. Trust isn't about learning something new. It's about remembering what you once knew but stopped practicing. People often ask, how do I trust again? But the better question is, how do I trust myself again? And the answer is simple but not easy. You rebuild self-trust through consistency, honesty with yourself, and keeping promises to yourself. You must become someone you can rely on, because when you trust yourself, you don't fear betrayal. If someone betrays your trust, you won't fall apart, you'll walk away because you trust yourself to act. Rebuilding self-trust doesn't eliminate pain in life, but it eliminates the paralysis that once kept you stuck. It gives you the certainty that no matter what happens, you've got you. And that certainty changes the way you show up. Start small. Keep one promise to yourself every day, even if it's tiny. Tell yourself the truth faster. Don't explain your standards to people who benefit from you having none. Listen to your intuition the first time, not the 20th. Leave when respect is gone. You don't rebuild trust by waiting for someone safe to appear. You rebuild it by becoming someone who will protect your heart even when it's hard. You are not asking for too much, you just used to accept too little. And once you learn to never abandon yourself again, you will realize that trust wasn't broken by others, it was compromised by your silence, your tolerance, your fear. And it can be rebuilt, one aligned choice at a time. It's easy to say you stopped trusting because someone betrayed you, but if you look deeper, you'll see it wasn't trust that failed you, it was the absence of boundaries that allowed the betrayal to hit that hard. You gave people access to parts of you they never earned the right to touch. You handed out trust like a free sample, hoping kindness would inspire honesty, hoping loyalty would create loyalty in return. But trust without standards isn't noble, it's emotional gambling, and you kept betting on people's potential instead of their patterns. You assumed people would treat you the way you treated them, and when they didn't, the pain felt personal. It wasn't personal, it was a reflection of granting trust without qualification. You didn't get hurt because you trusted, you got hurt because you trusted without boundaries to protect you. Most of us were raised to believe trust is something you give to show you're a good person. But trust is not charity, it's an investment, and investments require due diligence. You wouldn't hand your money to someone with no proof of responsibility, but you hand your heart, your vulnerability, your secrets to people who haven't shown consistency. You call it being loving, but deep down, it's a fear of losing connection if you ask for more. So you under-ask, overgive, tolerate, excuse, and hope it turns into security. And when it doesn't, you think trust is the problem. But the real problem was treating trust as a starting point instead of something earned over time. Trusting too quickly isn't generosity, it's self-neglect disguised as openness. If you're honest, there were signs long before the betrayal. People tell you who they are not with their promises, but with their patterns. Inconsistency, selfishness, avoidance, emotional volatility, the indicators were there. But you rationalized them because setting boundaries felt risky, and you feared boundaries would push people away. What you didn't realize was that the very people who run when healthy boundaries appear are the ones who don't deserve proximity. You thought staying quiet kept the peace, but it only delayed the truth. Boundaries don't ruin relationships, they reveal which relationships were real. The absence of boundaries didn't protect the connection. It protected the dysfunction and silenced your needs. Trust did not hurt you, the lack of criteria did. You trusted potential instead of proof. You trusted words instead of actions. You trusted history instead of consistency. You trusted emotions instead of alignment. And when the emotional high wore off, you were left with the consequences of blind access. Trust is earned through repeated behavior over time, not through chemistry, attraction, shared trauma, or convenient connection. You weren't wrong for wanting to trust. You just skipped the part where you watched and evaluated. You made people special too quickly, and once they were special in your mind, you gave them privileges without accountability. Without a filter, everything gets in, including what was never meant for you. Boundaries are not walls, they are doors with locks and keys that you control. They don't keep people out, they allow the right people in at the right pace. A boundary is not a demand for someone else to change, it is a standard for how you allow yourself to be treated. You don't set boundaries to control others, you set them to protect your emotional well-being. And the truth is, most people don't have a trust issue, they have a boundary issue masked as a trust issue. Because when your boundaries are strong, you don't fear betrayal. You know that if someone crosses the line, you will enforce the consequence, even if your heart wants to stay. Boundaries turn trust from a vulnerability into a strength. There's a reason people avoid setting boundaries. It requires self-worth. To set a boundary, you must believe your needs deserve protection, your feelings deserve space, and your standards deserve respect. Many people would rather be chosen without boundaries than risk not being chosen with them. So they shrink, adapt, deny, and overextend. They confuse being agreeable with being valued. They confuse self-abandonment with love. They confuse leniency with loyalty, and then wonder why they feel resentful, unseen, or taken advantage of. But resentment is the emotional bill for boundaries that were never set. The discomfort of setting a boundary is small compared to the pain of living without them. You rebuild healthy trust by shifting from, "I hope they won't hurt me," to, "If they do, I will take care of myself." That shift is everything, because the goal isn't to avoid disappointment, it's to build self-trust so deeply that disappointment no longer destroys you. When you trust yourself to enforce consequences, you no longer fear giving trust to others. You don't need people to be perfect to feel safe. You just need to know that you will act when something is off. Safety doesn't come from controlling others. It comes from regulating access. It comes from choosing slowly, evaluating consistently, and adjusting when necessary. Trust becomes clear when boundaries are clear. To practice boundaries, start with pacing access. Stop giving 100% to people who have only shown 10% effort. Share your world in layers based on demonstrated reliability, not on instant emotional connection. Communicate your limits early, not after they've been crossed repeatedly. And don't warn someone more than once. A boundary with no consequence is a request. A boundary with consistent enforcement becomes a standard. You don't need to explain your standards to people who respect themselves. They naturally respect yours. It's only those who benefited from your lack of boundaries that will resist them. And their resistance shows you exactly why the boundary was needed. The version of you that got hurt wasn't naive, they were unprotected. They weren't weak for trusting. They were unsupported by the boundaries that would have safeguarded their trust. Instead of regretting that version of you, learn from them. They had courage to open their heart. Now you add strategy to that courage. You don't need to stop trusting people, you need to start trusting slower, smarter, and with alignment. The right people won't be offended by your boundaries, they will feel safer because of them. And the more you honor your standards, the more your life becomes filled with people who honor you without needing to be taught how. You tell yourself you don't trust anymore because people let you down, but the truth is you never fully processed the moments that broke you. You didn't allow yourself to grieve the betrayal, the disappointment, or the shock of realizing someone you cared for didn't care the same way. You rushed to be strong, to move on, to act unbothered, so you buried the pain instead of healing it, and what we bury doesn't disappear, it festers. It becomes the filter through which you see every new person, every new chance, every new connection. You didn't lose trust, you froze it in the moment you decided feeling nothing was safer than feeling everything. Avoidance felt easier than healing, so you chose emotional numbness as protection, not realizing it was silently becoming a cage. Unprocessed pain doesn't stay in the past. It sits in your present, disguised as "I don't care," "I'm fine," or "I don't need anyone." But those sentences are armor, not truth. You didn't suddenly become someone who hates connection. You became someone terrified of repeating the same emotional injury. You're not closed off because you don't believe in love or friendship anymore. You're closed off because you still feel the sting of the last time you opened up. Your heart hasn't healed, so it can't risk again. And when you tell yourself, "I can't trust people," what you're really saying is, "I don't trust myself to survive another heartbreak." The defense isn't against others, it's against re-experiencing your own unhealed pain. The world convinces you that withdrawing is strength. Protect your energy, cut everyone off, don't show emotion. But emotional detachment isn't growth, it's self-protection masquerading as maturity. True growth is when you can face what hurt you, feel it fully, learn from it, and still keep your heart open with discernment. Healing isn't about proving you're unaffected. It's about allowing yourself to be honest with the impact it had on you. You can't heal from something you refuse to feel. You can't release what you haven't acknowledged. Suppression is not healing. It's emotional debt that always resurfaces with interest. And every time it resurfaces, you mistake it as proof that trust is unsafe, when really it's proof that healing is incomplete. Ask yourself, when was the last time you sat with your pain long enough to understand it? Not distract from it, not numb it, not busy your way around it, but actually listen to what it was trying to teach you. Pain is not punishment, it's information. It reveals the wound, the pattern, the blind spot, the ignored red flag, the unmet need. If you don't extract the lesson repeats disguised as new people, but with the same emotional outcome. Healing isn't about blaming yourself. It's about becoming conscious of why you allowed what happened, why you stayed, why you ignored the signs. Without that awareness, you keep reliving the same emotional cycle with different faces. Convincing yourself humanity is the problem when really the wound is. You didn't lose trust because someone hurt you, you lost trust because you stopped feeling safe within yourself. Betrayal creates a fracture, not just between you and the other person, but within your relationship with your own judgment. You start questioning your intuition. You start second-guessing your choices. You stop believing you can identify who is safe. And when you don't trust your ability to choose, the only solution that feels secure is avoiding choice altogether. So you stop trying. You stop connecting. You stop risking. But that safety is temporary and unfulfilling because human beings are wired for connection. And your heart notices the absence even if your mind tries to justify it. Numbness is not peace. It's paused suffering. The reason you struggle to trust again is because some part of you still feels stuck in the moment of the original wound. You never let the version of you who got hurt express, mourn, or release. You silence them by calling them weak, naive, foolish, or dramatic. But healing begins when you give compassion to that version of you instead of judgment. They weren't weak for caring. They were brave for opening their heart. They weren't naive for believing. They were hopeful in a world that benefits from cynicism. You can't heal by shaming yourself for the qualities that make you human. You heal by understanding that your sensitivity, empathy, and ability to trust were strengths. They just lacked boundaries, wisdom, and self-protection. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting what happened. It means releasing the emotional grip it has on your present identity. You don't heal by deleting the memory, you heal by changing the meaning it holds. Instead of "I was stupid to trust," it becomes "I learned what I need to look for next time." Instead of "no one is trustworthy," it becomes "I now choose more carefully who I trust." Instead of "I'll never open up again," it becomes "when I open up again, I'll do it with self-awareness, not blind hope." Healing turns pain into wisdom, not walls. Without this shift, you protect yourself from love and connection more fiercely than you protect yourself from harm. You don't need to learn how to trust people again. You need to learn how to process, release, and integrate what hurt you. Because once you heal, trust becomes natural again. Trust is not a skill, it is the default state of a healthy heart. The reason it feels foreign right now is because your heart is still carrying unprocessed emotional weight. heal the weight, and trust returns on its own. Not as blind innocence, but as a grounded, conscious, empowered openness. Trusting with awareness is very different from trusting with fear or desperation. Healing gives you the ability to open the door again with a lock, a peephole, and the strength to close it when needed, not with it wide open and unguarded. Healing isn't quick, and it isn't linear. Some days you'll feel like you've moved on, and on others, a small trigger brings everything back. That doesn't mean you're failing, it means you're human. Healing is a gradual unlearning of the need to self-protect at the cost of self-connection. It's learning to sit with discomfort without shutting down. It's learning to express your needs instead of silencing them. It's learning to choose people based on alignment, not chemistry. And the more you heal, the more you realize trust was never the enemy unhealed wounds were. Once those wounds are acknowledged, understood, and released, your heart no longer needs armor. It has wisdom. Trust isn't a feeling you wake up with one morning. It's something built piece by piece through repeated actions, aligned intentions, and consistent behavior over time. Most people think trust is either there or it's not, like a switch, but it's more like a muscle that develops with intentional use. You don't rebuild trust by hoping the right people magically show up. You rebuild it by becoming more disciplined about who gains access and how quickly. When you were younger, you trusted fast because you led with emotion, connection, and chemistry. Now, trust requires something different: observation, pacing, and alignment between what someone says and what they repeatedly do. Trust isn't built in the moments when everything is good. It's built in the moments where someone has the opportunity to disappoint you but chooses not to. You may feel like trust is risky, but risk only exists when you invest without data. When someone shows consistency, reliability, and integrity over time, trust becomes less of a gamble and more of a logical conclusion. The problem wasn't that you trusted, it's that you trusted too early before someone earned that position in your life. People reveal themselves slowly through patterns rather than promises. Anyone can impress you for a week. Consistency is what reveals character. The right people don't rush you into trust. They allow it to build gradually. They understand that trust must be constructed, not demanded. If someone insists you trust them quickly, that's not a sign of safety, it's a warning. Part of rebuilding trust is learning to measure it. Ask yourself, does this person show up when it's inconvenient, or only when it benefits them? Do they keep their word when no one is watching? Do they acknowledge mistakes and correct them, or do they justify, blame, and deflect? Trustworthy people are not perfect, but they are accountable. You don't need someone who never fails. You need someone who is willing to repair the damage when they do. Trust grows when actions match words, when apologies come with changed behavior, and when someone chooses honesty over comfort. You build trust by paying attention not to how someone treats you at their best, but how they handle you, themselves, and the relationship at their worst. To rebuild trust, you must also upgrade how you choose people. You don't select people based on how much you like them. You select based on how they treat you, how they treat others, and how they live. The right people will not test your wounds. They will help you heal them through their presence, consistency, and respect. Trust grows in environments where you don't have to shrink, question your worth, or fear emotional punishment. It grows where communication is safe, where emotional needs are respected, and where vulnerability isn't weaponized. Selection is everything, because trust built on the wrong foundation is guaranteed to collapse. When you choose better, trust becomes easier because you're choosing people capable of honoring it. One of the most important parts of trust is pacing. You must learn to let someone earn deeper access step by step. Open the door slowly, share gradually, observe consistently. Don't give someone the role of inner circle when they have only completed the audition. Trust shouldn't be a gift handed to someone based on potential. It should be a progression earned through demonstrated loyalty. You don't need to test people with complicated scenarios. Everyday consistency reveals everything. Time exposes truth. Anyone can replicate kindness for a short period, but character is revealed over time. The more patient you are with building trust, the more accurate your perception becomes, and the safer your heart will feel. Rebuilding trust also requires rebuilding your ability to trust yourself to handle whatever outcome comes. Trusting others becomes easier when you know you can walk away from the wrong ones. If you believe you'll tolerate disrespect again, you will fear trusting. If you believe you'll enforce boundaries and leave if needed, trust becomes less threatening. Self-trust is the anchor of external trust. It gives you the confidence to open up without losing yourself. When you trust yourself to protect your peace, you don't need to build walls around your heart, you build standards at the door. You no longer fear betrayal because you know you won't abandon yourself again if it shows up. Understand that trust isn't about creating a relationship with no conflict or mistakes. It's about building one where problems strengthen the bond instead of break it. The strongest trust is built through moments of truth when honesty replaces hiding, when accountability replaces ego, and when growth replaces repeating the same harm. Relationships without conflict aren't healthy, they're emotionally dishonest. It is the ability to repair, recover, and rebuild that makes trust sustainable. Real trust is tested not by perfection, but by what happens after imperfection. When people handle conflict with respect, solutions, and repair, trust deepens instead of shatters. You rebuild trust by shifting from emotional trust to earned trust. Emotional trust says, I feel good with you, so I'll trust you. Earned trust says, I see who you are through time, so I will trust you accordingly. Emotional trust is fast, intense, and fragile. Earned trust is slow, calm, and resilient. When trust is earned, it survives difficulty, distance, and discomfort. It no longer depends on how you feel on a given day. It's grounded in consistent evidence. And that kind of trust creates emotional safety, not anxiety. It allows you to experience closeness without fear, connection without suspicion, love without self-abandonment. It replaces hypervigilance with grounded awareness. As you rebuild trust, remember this. Trust is not a leap, it is a bridge. It connects two people, but it must be built from both sides. You can't build it alone, and you can't force someone to meet you halfway. You can choose who deserves to stand on the bridge with you. You can choose the pace at which the bridge is built, and you can choose to walk away from anyone who refuses to contribute to building it. Trust requires patience, discernment, and emotional maturity. It requires replacing fear-driven avoidance with wisdom-driven selection. You don't need everyone to be trustworthy. You just need a few aligned people who value trust as deeply as you do. And here's the truth worth sitting with. It is better to trust with standards than to live with walls. Walls may keep you safe, but they also keep you lonely, disconnected, and unfulfilled. Trust built wisely gives you access to the depth, intimacy, support, and partnership you crave. You were not born to move through life alone behind emotional armor. You were built for connection, but connection that honors you, protects your heart, and grows with you. So instead of saying, I can't trust again, start saying, next time, I will choose differently, pace intentionally, and trust consciously. Because trust isn't about avoiding pain, it's about building relationships strong enough to move through it together.